And finally, he says, which I think is really helpful, he suggests I would also follow up all communications and ask for a confirmation of receipt. So that's something I wouldn't actually necessarily think of doing. So that's Brian Johnson from Chum FM. I also wanted to note that Tori from Kingston This Week, and a freelance writer, was kind enough to write out some sample press releases, which I'll leave at the front here. And I guess she has a what not to do and what to do. This is the, well, I'll let you decide. You guys can figure it out. And so before we go into just general questions, Colin, if you're up for saying a few words, that'd be great. Colin Wigington.
So for those of you I haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Colin Wigington, and I'm the Manager of Cultural Services for the City of Kingston. And I'm happy to be here tonight on behalf of the city and also Brian McCurdy, who's the Cultural Director. And I'll point out as well that two of my colleagues are here, Julie Fawcett, who's the Coordinator of Marketing, and Annabelle Gerard, who's the Program Coordinator for the city. And it's great that all three of us are here tonight because, as one of the things we'll talk about, I have to duck out shortly to go to another event because things are often happening on the same night. So we want to be able to represent what it is that we do, but that's one of the realities. So just for those of you who maybe don't know cultural services or aren't familiar with what we do, this is still a relatively new department at the city. Obviously, culture has existed in various forms over the years, but it was really only 2 or 3 years ago that cultural services as an entity was established under the leadership of Brian McCurdy. And essentially our role is twofold right now. We are both a content producer in that we're responsible for things like the Grand Theater and 2 city-owned museums, the Pompeo Steam Museum and the Balkan Woodworking Museum. And increasingly we're also starting to program in City Hall and get into other areas of endeavor as well. So we're cultural producers. But one of the other roles that we're starting to take on more and more is that of a community cultural development agency. And that is to put our resources out there and to be available to the Kingston community to help with the kinds of things that are going on and find ways that we can support the kinds of activities that are going on. So one of the big things that many of you are familiar with that we've worked on in the past year is the creation of the Kingston Culture Plan. And this is the document here that got underway last September and was completed basically in the summer of 2010 and got approved by City Council just at the end of September. And it's a long document that has 60 recommendations that really is meant to be a framework for what we're going to be doing with the city over the next 5 to 10 years in terms of our work. And as part of that process, we went through an extensive kind of public consultation process over the past year. And I just wanted to highlight that when we had our first round of meetings in September 2009, there was both an evening and a daytime meeting, of which we produced these workshop reports. The big issue that was flagged as one of the things that we need to strengthen here in Kingston in order to support cultural vitality was, depends how you described it, but one group called it information flow and another group called it communications. And really what they were flagging is the need for greater communication between arts organizations, greater communication between arts organizations and their audiences, and greater support of the media here in Kingston in terms of just getting the word out there. So that was something that was flagged as a priority at that time. And some of the ideas that were brought forward was that there needed to be sort of a place for one-stop shopping that people could go to get information about what's going on in terms of arts and culture in Kingston. And an example that was given was couldn't an organization like the Kingston Arts Council fulfill that role? And of course, as many of us know, in these the subsequent months, the Kingston Arts Council has moved towards the creation of their interactive arts portal, which went live earlier this fall, as that kind of answer to that need. And it's something that's evolving over time, but that is a tool that exists. There was also obviously calls for more coverage in print media or the emergence of social media, which obviously these speakers have spoken to and will be a topic for discussion this evening. And also there were calls for the city to be more actively involved in trying to get the word out about what's going on culturally here. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit more about sort of what our role is as it's evolving the next little while. And as I mentioned, we're really focusing on being a community cultural development agency. And to the point that Greg made, I think we're all experiencing the fact that there's more sort of producers than there often is audience. And so audience development is a big thrust of what it is that we're doing. And obviously we're trying to do audience development for our own product, particularly the place like the Grand Theater. But we're also trying to see what we can do in order to support audience development more broadly. So some of the things that we've been looking at, sort of by way of an example, is we recently partnered with Theatre Kingston, for example. So we at the Grand Theatre have our Grand Theatre Presents series, of which theater is an aspect. And so we did an initiative in which we combined our product in terms of theater with what it is that Theatre Kingston's doing and tried to sell that as a package. So it was a way to sort of take some of our resources that exist and partner with a local arts organization and see how we could combine those efforts to move things forward. We're also doing initiatives like a festival you might have heard of called Art Ignite, which is something that came out of Queen's University that the city's involved with in trying to create a marketing umbrella for things in February that would be a cultural complement to FedFest. So as the downtown BIA is doing their focus on hockey and sports and winter activities, we're working with Queen's University to try and draw attention to the fact that within a 2-week window of time in February, there's a whole range of cultural activities that are available for people to participate in. And that's been a great exercise in terms of connecting with the Agnes Etherington Arts Center, the Real Out Film Festival, the School of Music, student-run initiatives. And in terms of audience development, Art Ignite is a really interesting thing because we're trying to both bring students off of the Queen's campus into the Kingston community, but also try and create opportunities for the Kingston community to go to the campus. So that's the kind of initiative that we're wanting to get involved with so that we're not necessarily leading the charge, but we're finding ways that we can sort of provide our resources to support more active sort of partnerships within the community so that everybody wins. And we're also now looking, moving forward into 2011, with working with a group called the Kingston Association of Museums, Art Galleries, and Historic Sites to see how we can collaborate with them to raise profile more generally about the fact that Kingston is literally a city of museums, and we've got something like 24 museums here, and we're all searching for different parts of this sort of audience demographic. So how can we work together to raise the profile for everyone so that people recognize Kingston as a city that they can come to and have a very varied kind of experience of the different museums that are existing here. So that also ties into a big thrust of the work that we're doing right now, which is cultural tourism. And that's something that we want to support more and more. And so as an outcome of the Kingston Culture Plan, we're trying to seek the resources that we need that we can start to develop that cultural tourism experience here in Kingston and help our own sort of residents to be tourists in their own city and to get out and be actively engaged, but also to reach wider audiences and bring them here for all the incredible product that we have. So these are sort of longer term endeavors that we're getting involved with, the things that other people can participate in as it sort of rolls its way out. And I'm just trying to think of some other things to mention here. It's really trying to be foundational in a lot of the work that we're doing right now. So, ultimately our goal at Cultural Services is to fulfill the mandate of the city and what the city is trying to achieve, while also trying to be a content provider. But we're wanting to do these kinds of foundational things that will lay the groundwork for moving forward. And I was just refreshing my memory that one of recommendation number 43 in here is that we would create opportunities for helping to take our resources out to look at how we can serve other arts organizations and heritage organizations in terms of their outreach. And in many ways, this is what Greg's doing tonight. He's fulfilling this recommendation through the Kingston Arts Council by convening this kind of workshop so that we can all bring our skills and expertise together and learn from each other as we try to resolve these issues collaboratively. And so, that's really great. So, as a background to that, we're trying to direct more resources to the Kingston Arts Council so that they can do these kinds of programs, and we can all benefit from that. So, that's just some highlights of where we sit in terms of cultural services at the city. And I guess, Greg, if I can, if anyone has any questions of me right now, I'm happy to do my part to answer questions since I do have to leave. But as the conversation evolves, I would certainly suggest that you draw upon Julie's expertise in working with tonight, because as a marketing coordinator, she's got a lot of experience that she can bring to this discussion as well.
So, let's move into questions. And again, just ask anyone any questions. Maybe they can, raise their hand so I can have some kind of order. And to stand and say who you are and put up with any specific questions for Colin from Cultural Services to see as we want to event. Might be free to go.
But I am
Hi. Have you ever participated in the facilitation of marketing focus groups in town? I mean, I know that there seem to be conversations happening in all of the different groups that I'm in about who's our marketing reaching, who's it not reaching, what's the message that we're actually conveying to them, who they think we are, how come our branding isn't making us distinct, etc. So have you participated or heard of any?
I'll defer to Julie on that because we have been pretty actively engaged with environics and other kinds of market studies. So I don't know, Julie, if there's anything that you want to weigh in.
The short answer is no. Okay, thank you, but great idea. Yeah, I mean, we engaged in Environics Analytics to do some research on our patrons, our being the Grand Theater, and we also did some research using, we needed to have data.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a challenge with some of our partners, like the museums, because a lot of them don't necessarily have the resources, and there's a lot of resistance from patrons coming in saying, well, why do you need my postal code, etc. So one of our main goals, as we're doing kind of our 3-year plan right now with how we're going to roll out these 60 recommendations, is how can we try to do some better data collection or assist, for example, the museum, so we can maybe do something like that, but maybe in the short term do some more focused things that would provide some more immediate results. So we're just we actually just had a session today where we're trying to figure out what we're doing in the next 3 years.
Well, they're really hard, focus groups are, and they're hard to facilitate, it's hard to make them run well. It's hard to actually get the people to come and then to ask the right questions, and it seems like you folks have the resources.
Yeah, I've run them in the past in my other jobs,
Yeah.
and they're very time consuming, but I think they're well worth it if you can get the right people.
I've been involved in a couple of really useless ones.
Yeah.
So I can do one of those.
Yeah, right.
Go and do this thing first.
But as part of the work that we're starting to develop around this cultural tourism strategy, I imagine that there'll be opportunity for us to work with a lot of people in this room right now as we're starting to develop what that looks like and the different forms that we take. So I think we'll have an opportunity in the next probably year to start to dig into some of those things.
Yeah, and I think the key, obviously, when you're looking at focus groups is, a lot of the sessions that we had for the Culture Master Plan were some of the people that are in this room. That's not necessarily who we want to talk to.
Yeah.
They're all here because they're already converted. So I think that would be a good question: is how do we broaden our scope to talk to, your average Kingstonian? So.
Next question here for Colin.
Yeah, Roger James. I'm on the KEDCO meetings and conferences committee. Just wondering if there's anywhere we can look for more information on the cultural tourism, any resources developed for that, or what stuff to
Well, we're
look at as a committee.
in these formative stages of developing the cultural tourism strategy. We've been working with Jeff Guerra and Ron Carnegie at KEDCO, so they're part of the discussion, so that's our most direct. But good question, good to ask.
Okay, thanks so much, Colin. So we're going to move into questions now for the next 20 minutes or so. And for our panelists here, and there's going to be the first question. So again, just raise your hand and stand if you have questions. If I can request that maybe we ask questions less about why didn't you write my story, and more about how can I go about submitting information to you better? If I advertise with you, what audience will I be reaching? Those kinds of things. Because again, this is about how we can better promote arts in Kingston.